Hello, this is Susan Woods of Susan Woods Nonprofit Solutions, and welcome. Welcome to the How to Start a 501c3 Nonprofit Organization class. A little bit about me before we jump into the class. Again, my name is Susan Woods, and I started a nonprofit organization called Comprehensive Community-Based Solutions Incorporated in 2003. I offered two programs underneath that organizational structure: Panorama Computer Learning Program and the Emerging Leaders Mentorship Program for Black male youth. I offer nonprofit consulting services. Specifically, I complete the 501c3 application packets for private clients, and I also facilitate a broad range of classes for nonprofit leaders. I have three nonprofit certifications in management. The first nonprofit management certificate is from Wake Forest University in 2015, Winthrop University in 2016, and Duke University in 2017. I'm a three-time graduate of Winthrop University in Rock Hill, South Carolina. I earned a bachelor's degree in business administration, a Master of Arts degree in business education, and a Master of Business Administration degree. The services that I offer through my business include: I offer nonprofit DVD classes, instructor-led nonprofit classes that includes in-person and via webinars, private nonprofit consulting services. Again, I complete the 501c3 application packet for people. And I also started helping people get their nonprofit statuses reinstated after they have been revoked. This is the copyright notice for this information that's being shared via this DVD. I ask that you please take a moment to read it. Thank you. And I do ask that you adhere to the copyright notice because it does take a lot of time and effort to create the DVD productions that I create. So I ask that you please adhere to the copyright notice. Thank you. So, how to start a 501c3 nonprofit organization? Introduction. What is a 501c3 nonprofit? A 501c3 nonprofit organization is a corporation or other type of organization that is exempt from federal income tax under Section 501c3 of Title 26 of the United States Code. Now you notice that I highlighted the C in 501c3 in the first sentence in red. The reason that I did that is because some people confuse the way that you state this particular code. For example, they will say 501(3)C when in fact it's 501(c)(3). The C is in the middle, or the letter is in the middle of the two numbers. That could be a way to remember it. It is the most common type of the 29 types of 501c nonprofit organizations in the United States. It also offers a designation that allows the most diversified revenue generating strategies. Now, I highlighted the word common in red in the second paragraph because 501c3 is the most common type of the 29 types of 501c designations in the United States. Again, there are 29 types of 501c's. You have a 501c3, 501c4, 501c, so on. But the 501c3 is the most common type. IRS tax exempt purposes. The IRS has established purposes that they use to determine whether or not a 501c3 application meets the qualifications to be approved with 501c3 status. The 8 IRS tax-exempt purposes are as follows. Number 1, charitable. You notice the asterisk here, and that is because there is more information to come regarding this purpose. Number 2, religious. 3, educational. 4, scientific. 5, literary. 6, testing for public safety. 7, fostering national or international amateur sports competition. And 8, preventing cruelty to children and animals. If your purpose or your vision for a 501c3 nonprofit organization falls within one of the 8 purposes, does not have to be all 8, just one of the 8 purposes listed here, then you should feel free to apply for 501c3 status. IRS tax-exempt purposes continued. Now, as I mentioned in the previous slide, the asterisk beside the word charitable meant there was additional information to come. But this is the additional information: charitable purposes. Relief of the poor, distressed, or the underprivileged. Number 2, advancement of religion. Number 3, advancement of education or science. Number 4, erecting or maintaining public buildings, monuments, or works. Number 5, lessening the burdens of government. Number 6, lessening neighborhood tensions. Number 7, eliminating prejudice and discrimination. Number 8, defending human and civil rights secured by law. And number 9, combating community deterioration and juvenile delinquency. Now, as you can see, the charitable purpose has sub-purposes underneath it. So if your vision or your purpose did not fit neatly into the other 7 areas of the 8 purposes, then maybe the charitable area is best for you. And if your vision fits within one of these 9 categories, you can still apply for tax-exempt status. Advantages of 501c3 status. The organization is exempt from paying taxes on revenues generated. Investors can write off investments or donations per IRS guidelines. Right to solicit funds after receiving a charitable solicitation license. Legal life of its own, separate from personal accounts. Continuous existence after the original team leaves. Fiscal year flexibility to start and end in any month of the year. Low postage rates depending upon bulk selection. And community goodwill by providing needed services. These are all advantages of the 501c3 status, and you may be able to think of more advantages when you look at your particular situation. But the first one, the organization is exempt from paying taxes on revenues generated. That's true. You can raise revenues to offer the services that you want to offer in your community and not have to pay taxes on those revenues that you generate. The second part of that, which is an advantage to your investors, is they can write off their investments per IRS guidelines, of course, but they can write off their investments. So if someone makes an investment in your organization of $10,000, they can write off that investment, which is an advantage to them. You have the right to solicit funds after receiving your charitable solicitation license. That means that you have to go through a process with the Secretary of State's office in order to ask or solicit funds in any manner, not just walking up to someone and telling them about your nonprofit organization and soliciting funds. Soliciting funds is through any means: grant writing, fundraising, or asking for money directly. You have to have a license from the Secretary of State's office in order to do that. So you would contact your Secretary of State's office and download or request the applications that are required for your state to get a charitable solicitation license. And once you get that license, you will be able to then raise money for your organization. You cannot do it legally before that, and if you do, you can face a severe fine from the Secretary of State's office. There is a fee for processing the charitable solicitation license. Your organization has a legal life of its own, separate from personal accounts. That's very important because it's a corporation, and corporations do have a legal life of their own that are separate from anybody's personal account. Therefore, you have to have two separate accounts. Your personal account that you already have at a bank or whatever, and then an account for your corporation. Continuous existence after the original team leaves. The goal of starting a 501c3 is to have continuous existence after you leave. That means you have to establish it in such a way and operate it in such a way that you always have someone that's ready to take over the reins when you leave the organization. Many, many years ago, when the Salvation Army was established, apparently someone had the organization set up where continuous existence would happen after the original team left. That's how you want to establish your 501c3, because you don't want a 501c3 that's here today and gone tomorrow. Fiscal year flexibility to start and end in any month. That means you don't have to use a calendar year, January through December, to operate your 501c3 nonprofit organization. You can use any month to start and end your 501c3. Low postage rates depending upon bulk selection. You are entitled as a 501c3 nonprofit organization to have the opportunity to use a bulk postage rate, meaning a lower postage rate with the postal service, but there is an application process to be able to take advantage of that option. So you will have to weigh the cost of the application process versus the benefits of having a low postage rate. If you do not do a lot of direct mailing, then I don't know if this would be an advantage for you to pursue. And finally, community goodwill by providing needed services. When the community leaders or people in the community in general see that your nonprofit organization is having a positive impact on the community, it will yield goodwill on behalf of your nonprofit organization. So these are the advantages of a 501c3 status. And again, like I said before, you may know of other advantages. Disadvantages of 501c3 status. Now, I don't know if we could say that these are really disadvantages. Maybe these are just consequences or unpleasant aspects of a 501c3 status, or the unpleasant aspects of pursuing the 501c3 status. But I'll let you decide. Secretary of State applications and fees. In order to receive a 501c3 status, you first have to be approved to operate on the Secretary of State's level or on the state level. And to be approved to operate in the state in which you plan to operate, you have to go through an approval process through your Secretary of State's office, and that includes applications and fees. So that's kind of unpleasant. The IRS Form 1023 application and fee. The IRS Form 1023 application for recognition of exemption is the official name of the application packet that you will have to complete in order to earn 501c3 status. So the application fee has been changed from $850 to $600 as of December 2017. So that's good news. But still, the fee of $600 is required in order for your application packet to be processed. Lack of control due to corporate status. The 501c3 nonprofit organization will not belong to you. It's not like you are in the for-profit sector where you start a business. It is your business. A nonprofit organization does not belong to anyone because it's a corporation that you established to provide community services. So you have lack of control, total control, due to the corporate status. Little flexibility due to the board of directors. A nonprofit organization is governed by a board of directors, which means that the board of directors will require all employees, all team members to adhere to the rules outlined in the bylaws. So So there's little flexibility to change. Once you have submitted your bylaws as a part of your 501c3 application packet and the IRS approves your bylaws, then you have to operate based on what is listed in the bylaws. There's little flexibility regarding that. External scrutiny from skeptical people. You will be scrutinized, so just know that. Once people learn that you are offering a 501c3 organization in your community or that you offer community services, people are watching and they are going to scrutinize what you do. That's just the nature of people. So just be prepared for that. That's life. If you're doing a good job, then it shouldn't be impactful for you. And then it's time consuming to establish. It's time consuming to establish a 501c3 nonprofit organization because you're new at the process. The process is new for you, and it's going to take time to really navigate through the process and understanding everything that's required to create a great foundation for your nonprofit organization, because you want to establish a solid foundation upon which to build a 501c3 nonprofit organization successfully. So take your time, walk through the process step by step so that your foundation can be solid when implementing your 501c3. The last thing you want to do is start a nonprofit organization on a weak foundation. That will not have a good end result. So now it's time to check your knowledge based on what we learned in the introductory section of this class. Knowledge check. What are the three most popular IRS purposes? The three most popular IRS purposes of the 8 are charitable, religious, and educational. How many charitable purposes does the IRS allow? 8. What is a 501c3 advantage? One advantage could be tax exempt status, meaning you don't have to pay taxes on the revenues that you generate. What is a 501c3 disadvantage? I would say the fees that are required to process the various applications. Okay, now it's time to move forward in our class. How to start a 501c3 nonprofit organization. 20 simple steps checklist. I have created a checklist that includes 20 steps that a person can use to start a 501c3 nonprofit organization. And I highly encourage you to follow the steps in the order in which they are listed. 20 simple steps to starting a 501c3 nonprofit organization. Here we go. 1. Observe a problem in the community over time. 2. Confirm the validity of your problem observation. 3. Register broad name for the nonprofit organization. 4. Acquire the Employer Identification or EIN letter. 5. Define the purpose of the organization. 6. Determine the location of the organization. 7. List the human resources required to offer services. 8. List the tangible assets required to offer services. 9. Combine steps 8 and 9 to create an expense report. 10. Host community awareness meeting. These are the first 10 of the 20 simple steps required to start a 501c3 nonprofit organization. I will give you a few moments to read them again. Okay, Moving right along. 11. Write and file articles of incorporation. 12. Write bylaws. 13. Write narrative description of activities. 14. Write conflict of interest policy. 15. Write fundraising activities. 16. Write financial data report. 17. Complete Form 1023 application for recognition of exemption. 18. Organize application packet. 19. Proofread application packet. 20. Mail Form 1023 application for recognition of exemption to the new IRS address. These are steps 11 through 20 of the 20 simple steps. I'll give you a few moments to read over them again. Okay, great. So we've looked at the 20 simple steps to starting a 501c3 nonprofit organization. So now let's dig a little deeper and learn more about each step. When I teach classes, I like to use real life scenarios to talk about the different topics in the class. So in this case, I'm going to use a scenario to teach the 20 simple steps to starting a 501c3 nonprofit organization. The class scenario. The class scenario that I'm going to use is a personal one because it comes from Comprehensive Community-Based Solutions Incorporated. And again, that's the 501c3 nonprofit organization that I started in 2003. For our purposes, I'm going to focus on the Emerging Leaders Mentorship Program for Black male youth. That was a program underneath the organization. And I'm going to use the Emerging Leaders Mentorship Program for Black male youth to talk about the 20 steps to starting a 501c3 nonprofit organization. The 20 steps that I use to start this organization. And then that way you will see a real life scenario of how to use the 20 simple steps. Okay, let's get started. Step number 1 of 20. Do you remember it? Step 1 of 20. Observe a problem in the community. That's step number 1 of 20. What's wrong? What is wrong? What has been on your mind that you see in a community that bothers you? That's step number 1. Define the problem. Describe the demographics. Describe the service area. In my case, the problem that I saw was black male youth not reaching their full potential. That bothered me to see them dropping out of school, getting into trouble, going to jail, or worse. That was the problem I observed in my community. The demographics is simply a description of the people you plan to serve. The demographics of the people that I plan to serve was, again, black male youth. In my case, ages 10 through 18, who lived, according to the IRS, in poverty, who did not have good role models, who did not have self-esteem and confidence. And I could go on and on and on and on. But they weren't meeting their full potential. So when you talk about demographics, when you describe demographics, you want to paint a picture of the group of people you plan to serve and be very clear about that. Because when you're painting a picture, you want people who do not live in the community to be able to visualize the people you planning to serve. And then third, describe the service area. Where do the people in your demographics live? What service area has the problem? You want to be very clear about that. The service area could be my hometown of Clio, South Carolina. It's a very small town, one stoplight, no resources for children except when they go to school. So the problem comes in when the summertime comes and the schools are closed. That's when the children in my demographic profile get into trouble. So the service area is very, very rural, country, boring probably to children. So in this instance, in step one, I have described the problem that I've observed in the community that I want to observe. I've told you about the problem, I told you about the people impacted by the problem, and I told you where they live. That's step number 1 of 20. This is what you will have to do for your nonprofit organization application. Step 2 of 20 steps to starting a 501c3 nonprofit organization is confirm validity of the problem. What steps did you use to validate the problem? Research to compile statistical data, communicate with potential clients, or communicate with stakeholders. As I said in the first step, I explained the problem that I identified in the community, and that was Black male youth not reaching their full potential. And you probably could hear in my voice and the way that I communicated, I'm very concerned about that problem. It bothers me. But step 2 says confirm validity of the problem. That means you have to confirm the fact that you're not the only person who feels this is an issue or the problem is actually a problem. So what steps did I use to validate the problem that I had observed in the community? I did research to compile the data. I used research from the Department of Education, the Department of Juvenile Justice, and a fantastic resource called the Schott Foundation, SCHOTT Foundation, and they have what is called a Black Boys Report. And this report compiles data from across the United States, specifically about Black male youth. So it was a perfect resource for me to use to compile statistical data. Communicate with potential clients. Well, the potential clients would be Black male youth. So many times we create programs for youth and we never ask them how they feel or what they want or what they need. So I did communicate with potential clients to see what type of program would appeal to them. And they shared what types of things they would like to learn and how they would like the program to be structured. And finally, communicate with stakeholders. Who are stakeholders? Well, stakeholders are the people who are impacted by the problem in the community. So who's impacted by the results or the consequences of Black male youth not reaching their full potential? Teachers, guidance counselors, principals, people in the community, church organizations, whomever those children touch are stakeholders. They are stakeholders. They are the ones who are impacted by them not being ready to go to work or ready to be productive or ready to go to college or whatever, ready to meet their full potential. So you want to confirm the validity of the problem by doing all of these steps and whatever steps that are relevant to what your organization is going to do in the community. Some people use questionnaires for this purpose, but you must confirm the validity of the problem, showing that you're not the only person who sees this as a problem in the community. Step number 3 of 20, register broad name for the organization. When I started my 501c3 nonprofit organization in 2003, It was actually called Panorama Computer Learning. It was called Panorama Computer Learning because at the time I only focused on teaching displaced manufacturing workers how to use computers to secure new employment. Now, I had no idea that I would be doing anything else, so that's why it was called Panorama Computer Learning. The lesson that I learned is that name was too narrow because 5 years later, God blessed me with a vision to start the Emerging Leaders Mentorship Program for Black male youth. So you can see how that would be confusing to potential investors. When I introduced a new program for Black male youth, people thought that we were going to teach them computer skills because of the name. So that was so confusing that I decided I needed to change the name of the organization to a broad name. The broad name allows you to add different programs underneath the organization in years to come and still make sense to the investors. So I ended up changing the name to Comprehensive Community-Based Solutions Incorporated. Under that name, you can add any type of program name that provides solutions in the community. Underneath that organizational name, I have the Emerging Leaders Mentorship Program for Black Male Youth Incorporated. And if we still offered Panorama Computer Learning, it would also fit neatly underneath that organizational structure. So the point here is when you're thinking about a name, don't think about a name or don't use a name that will restrict you from growing in the future. Use a broad name for your organization. Organizational structure. Let's take a look at the organizational structure here. Now, this is a typical organizational structure for any nonprofit organization. You don't have to use this structure, but I do encourage you to use something similar. At the very top of this structure, you have the name of the nonprofit organization. Okay? The organizational name goes at the top with the employer identification number or EIN. All of that's in the first block. Underneath that, you have the board of directors because the board of directors governs the operations of your nonprofit organization. Then you have the executive director. The executive director is in what I call a sandwich position because they are between the board of directors and the staff. So you have the executive director who manages the overall functions of the nonprofit organization and then reports back to the board of directors. Then you have the director. The director is the person who manages the managers of the nonprofit organization and then reports back to the executive director. So the director is the direct leader or the direct manager for all of the management team. Then you have the management team. You have the programs manager, the operations manager, the marketing manager, finance manager, and compliance manager. Once again, these managers may not be the type of managers you need for your organization, but nevertheless, this is the structure that I'm trying to share with you. The programs manager manages what your organization actually does, what type of services it actually provides. And in this case, in this example, ELMP means Emerging Leaders Mentorship Program. So the programs manager will manage the Emerging Leaders Mentorship Program for Black male youth, and they will also manage the Veterans Assistance Program if you had one. And again, they manages the day-to-day activities of the services you are actually providing. The operations manager handles the behind-the-scenes functions that are required for your organization to be successful, like logistics, scheduling, making sure that everything flows the way that it's supposed to flow in order for your organization to work. They manage facilities if that's needed. Then you have the marketing manager. The marketing manager manages traditional media, the media that we use before social media became a factor in advertising services. Then you have the finance manager who manages the accounting functions and IRS reports, and the compliance manager that manages human resources and legal aspects of the organization. So again, this is just a sample of an organizational structure that you can use in your organization to be successful. You have to have a structure. This is a perfect document to share with people who want to know how you operate at a glance. Step 4 of 20. Step 4 of 20 of starting a 501c3 nonprofit organization. Acquire EIN letter or employer identification letter. The employer identification number is required to earn a 501c3 determination letter from the IRS. The determination letter is the actual letter that confirms that you have completed all of the steps to earning a 501c3 designation. So grant funders, investors, anyone that wants to contribute to your organization will ask to see a copy of your determination letter, because that's the letter that says, congratulations, you have been awarded 501c3 status. You can secure the EIN letter by going to irs.gov website and completing the steps to secure the EIN letter. You can call the IRS and complete the application process over the phone. You can complete the EIN application and mail it in. Or you can fax the EIN application. Yes, you can still fax it into the IRS. My preferred method is using the irs.gov website and following the steps that are listed there, because you will get your copy of the EIN letter at the end of the process. And that way you can go ahead and save it to whatever space you have reserved for documents that pertain to your nonprofit organization. Securing the EIN letter is a free process. Step 5 of 20. Define purpose of organization. Why does your organization need to exist? What is the purpose of it? The purpose includes your vision statement. The vision statement is a broad statement of change. What is going to happen as a result of your organization in the long term? That's what a vision statement is. The mission statement explains how to meet the vision. So the mission statement, if you can look at the vision as a broad statement, the mission statement narrows it down by explaining how the vision statement will be realized. For example, the vision statement can be help black male youth reach their full potential in life. Now that's a broad statement. Now the mission statement could say by providing proactive and holistic leadership development services. You see how it narrowed that vision statement down to explain how the vision would be realized? Another part of the purpose of an organization is qualitative objectives. Qualitative objectives measures changes in behaviors and attitudes. This is what is called outcomes. So you can state in your purpose that you have a qualitative objective to affect the way black male youth feel about themselves, increase their self-esteem and their confidence, make them believe in their potential. Those are changes in behaviors and attitudes. Those are outcomes that your organization will have if given the opportunity. And then you have quantifiable goals. Quantifiable goals measures the number of clients that are going to be impacted by your program. So every year we used to set a goal of enrolling 40 young men into our program each summer. Those were the outputs that we were sharing with the community. So the purpose of an organization can be defined or can be shown with a vision statement, the mission statement, qualitative objectives, and quantifiable goals. Qualitative objectives, again, are outcomes. Quantifiable goals, again, are outputs. Okay, now it's time for a knowledge check. You have completed this section, and now it's time to check your knowledge. Knowledge check. Number one, what is a demographic client profile? 2, who are community stakeholders? 3, why use a broad name for a nonprofit organization? And 4, what do qualitative objectives measure? Now you should know the answer to these questions. So just take a few moments to read the questions to yourselves and then see if you can answer the questions. Okay, so what is a demographic client profile? The demographic client profile is just a description of the people you plan to serve in terms of their race, gender, income level, educational level, where they live. Anything that describes the people that you plan to serve is your demographic profile. Who are community stakeholders? They are the people who are impacted by the problem. Why use a broad name for a nonprofit organization? Because you don't want to narrow the options to expanding in the future by having a narrow name. And four, what do qualitative objectives measure? They measure a change in behavior and in attitudes. All right, let's keep going. Step 6 of 20. Determine the location. Where are you going to offer your services? Are you going to work from home? Are you going to rent a space to offer your services, or are you going to purchase a space to offer your services? Well, of course, that depends on the type of services you're planning to offer. In our case, we didn't have to rent a space, so all of us, meaning the team, we were able to work from our homes. And then when we had to meet with our young men, we either rented library conference rooms or church conference rooms, and during the summer, we would rent space at a local college, which was fantastic because it gave our young men the opportunity to be on a college campus. It really, really worked well, and they enjoyed it. Some of them even enrolled and attended the college that we used during the summer. So, step 6 of 20 is determine the location of where you're planning to offer your services. Step 7 of 20. Step 7 of 20 steps to starting a 501c3 nonprofit organization. List human resources. List the human resources job functions that are required. Write job descriptions for all job functions. Determine the salaries for each job function. Calculate the total salaries amounts required. So, who do you need to offer, who do you need to provide the services for your organization? The human resources job functions. You don't have to say who as far as the person's name, but what type of job functions need to be filled to offer this service. In our case, we needed teachers. We use certified teachers to facilitate our classes during the summers. So that's what we needed to use. Then we needed a logistics person, a logistics specialist, someone who was in charge of making sure we had the spaces that we needed available and reserved and paid for and contracts signed and all of that. We needed an administrative assistant, someone who maintained all of our records, for example, attendance records and disciplinary records and things like that. So those are just some examples of the job functions we needed to offer our Emerging Leaders Mentorship Program for Black male youth. So after you decide on what job functions you need, then you need to write the job descriptions for all of the job functions and make the job descriptions comprehensive, easy to understand, so that when you present them to the job candidates, they understand what type of jobs they are applying for and the responsibilities of those jobs. I also ask people to sign their job descriptions after they are hired for the role. Determine the salaries for each job function. You want to pay people a fair salary, so I use the Bureau of Labor Statistics.gov site to determine the salaries for our employees. And that site is www.bls.gov. That's B as in Bureau, L as in Labor, S as in Statistics.gov. That site has a lot of data for salaries. And then finally, you'll calculate the total salaries amount required. You'll add up all of the salaries for each job function to get the total amount required. And that's how that works. That's how that works. So that's step 7 of 20. List human resources, all of the job functions that you need. Step 8 of 20. Step 8 of 20. List tangible assets. Tangible assets are those things that you can touch, things that are required to offer your services. Tangible assets represent the things required to start your 501c3 nonprofit organization. Take time to brainstorm and document everything you need, such as the following: supplies, facilities, equipment, vehicles. After listing the tangible assets required, assign a per unit cost, calculate the total cost, and list the sources for the information you used. So let's talk about this, because this is a very, very important step. You want to think about every single thing you need to offer your services, the assets that are required. In our case, we needed supplies. We needed pens, paper, 3-ring binders, post-it notes, markers for the teachers, books, calculators, all of that we needed in terms of supplies. We needed a facility to rent. So every time we went somewhere, we had to include the cost of the facilities. For example, to rent space at the college we used, that was $5,000 for 5 weeks, so $1,000 a week. We needed equipment. We needed overhead projectors and cameras and video recorders and things like that. We did need a van. We needed a vehicle. We needed to use the van the entire summer to transport the guys to the different places they needed to go. And I could go on and on and on and on and on with the supplies that we needed to offer our services. But after you list everything that you need, then you go back and you assign a per unit cost for every single thing on the list. Everything has a cost. Calculate the total cost, and then you want to list the sources. Where did you get the information from? Where did you get the information? How do I know that a 3-ring binder costs $3.50? Well, I went to Office Depot and that was the cost. So that would be my source of that particular cost. So that's how you list tangible assets and then how you calculate the total cost of the tangible assets. So that's step 8 of 20. Step 9 of 20. Create an expense report. All you have to do to create an expense report is combine the totals from human resources that was in step 8 and the total from salaries and the total. Let me say that again. I'm sorry. To create an expense report, you combine the totals from human resources in step 8 salaries and the totals from assets, step 9, to create an expense report. In other words, you pull the total from step 8 and step 9 and add them together, and that would be your expense report. So you will list everything from step 8, all of the human resources, and everything from step 9, all of the assets, and then you will have your expense report. Step 10 of 20. Host a community awareness meeting. Host a community awareness meeting. A lot of people skip this step. Not because they don't want to, because they just don't think about it. But this is a very important step. This is an important step Host a community awareness meeting to share information about the proposed 501c3 nonprofit organization. Allow people from the community to share their concerns, ideas, suggestions, criticisms, and so on. You need their support. It's important to host this meeting, and I know it's hard when you are standing before people and you're proposing a 501c3 nonprofit organization, and you're going to have all kinds of people in that room. Believe me, I know. We hosted four. We hosted 4 meetings before we launched our program. And the reason you endure that is because you want to hear their concerns. You want to hear their ideas and suggestions, and you want to have someone that's actually writing it down. You don't want them to stand there and they share all of this information with you, and then they leave feeling like you're not going to do anything with it. So you want to have someone to document their concerns, or better yet, record the meeting. The reason you do that is because you need them. You need their support. You don't want to be in a position where you just go ahead and launch your nonprofit organization and then hope the community supports you. You don't want that. You want to have their buy-in. So when you do launch it, then you are ready to rely upon the support of the people who you involved in the beginning. So again, it's worth the effort. Believe me, it is. Like I said, we hosted 4 of them. So this is step 10 of 20, host a community awareness meeting. Now we have completed this section, it's time to complete another knowledge check to see how well we did. Knowledge check. Number 1, what is a legal requirement to work from home? I don't think I shared that. What is a legal requirement to work from home? Number 2, what resources used to determine salaries? 3, why should you brainstorm to list assets? 4, why host a community awareness meeting? So just take a few moments to read these questions, and we'll talk about the answers. Okay, number 1, what is a legal requirement to work from home? The legal requirement to work from home is that you have to have a zoning license. You have to have a zoning license to work from home. So you would go to the zoning office in the area where you live, and you would complete an application, and they would then look at your address, and they will see if your address is in an area where you can operate a nonprofit organization. Okay? And if it is, then they will give you the restrictions that are required that you will have to adhere to operate from home. All right. So you have to have a zoning license. 2, what resources used to determine salaries? I recommend the Bureau of Labor Statistics, www.bls.gov. 3, why should you brainstorm to list assets? Because you need to have the ability to just freely think about what you need without restrictions. So you want to have that information. You want to brainstorm. And then 4, why host a community awareness meeting? And that is just to let other people know what you're planning to do. That's to let other people know what you're planning to do. So these are the questions that you want to make sure you can answer the knowledge check. Step 11 of 20. Step 11 of 20. Write and file articles of incorporation. You want to write and file your articles of incorporation. That's step number 11 of 20. Write the write the Articles of Incorporation according to the IRS guidelines. And you can go to the irs.gov website and secure a copy of the Articles of Incorporation, a sample, or you can go to your Secretary of State's office to get a copy of the Articles of Incorporation to make sure that you include the information that is required. Complete and submit the application, either online or hard copy, to the Secretary of State's office for approval. You have to write and file the Articles of Incorporation because you cannot get a determination letter from the IRS for 501c3 status if your organization has not been approved at the Secretary of State level in the state in which you plan to operate your services. We operated in North Carolina, so we had to complete the Articles of Incorporation application and send them to the North Carolina Secretary of State office for processing. Now, there are many Secretary of State offices that use the online method to submitting applications to have the Articles of Incorporation approved and filed. South Carolina, the South Carolina Secretary of State office, for example, has an excellent online application process that they require you use. You can't even send in paper anymore. They require you use this online application system to submit your Articles of Incorporation to the Secretary of State's office. That's required. And all you have to do is just click on different parts of it and submit it. That's it. That's it. They make it so easy, and you can process your payment right then and there with no problem. And then it'll take a couple days for you to be notified of whether or not your application was approved. But that's a simple way of submitting it. And like I said, a lot of offices across the United States allow the online process, and some still require paper. What it means by having it filed means that your application to submit your Secretary of State articles were approved and they were stamped. When they are approved, they are stamped, and that is called filed. You will need to use that filed date in the IRS Form 1023 application for recognition of exemption, because there is a question that asks you your date of incorporation. Your date of incorporation is the filing date that is stamped on your Articles of Incorporation from the Secretary of State's office. So you will look for that Secretary of State office stamp on your articles, and they will have a date there, and that's your date of incorporation. The third bullet here, after the Articles of Incorporation are approved by the Secretary of State office, I just said that they are date stamped and filed in your records, available for public inspection. So keep that in mind. Everything that you put in your Articles of Incorporation, once they are approved and filed at the Secretary of State's office, anyone can go to the Secretary of State's office and pull your articles and read them because they are available for public inspection. So step 11 of 20 is write and file your Articles of Incorporation with the Secretary of State's office in the state in which you plan to operate your nonprofit organization. Step 12 of 20. Step 12 of 20 steps to starting a 501c3 nonprofit organization. Write the bylaws. I know you have heard people talk about the bylaws. I think the bylaws may be one of the most popular documents that are included in the Form 1023 application for recognition of exemption packet, the bylaws. So what are the bylaws? Bylaws are the rules that govern the operation of the nonprofit organization, which includes a list of articles. So the bylaws are written using a list of articles, very similar to the articles that are included in the Articles of Incorporation. The bylaws articles provide information regarding your program services, employee management, board of directors roles and responsibility. They also include how you're going to facilitate your board meetings and other important information. So I highly encourage you to get a good example of bylaws to use in your nonprofit in your Form 1023 application for recognition of exemption. Make sure that you get a good example because the bylaws are used by IRS agents during audits. For example, in our program with the Emerging Leaders Mentorship Program for Black Male Youth, in our bylaws we indicated how our program was going to operate day to day. One example was where we indicated that our program would be open, the doors would be open at 7:30 a.m. and we would operate from 7:30 a.m. to 6 o'clock p.m. every day. Okay, now if someone notified the IRS that we were not adhering to those time frames that we listed in our bylaws, then the IRS agent could visit where we were hosting the program and let us know that we are not adhering to the schedule that we outlined in the bylaws. Now, of course, the IRS is not going to send an agent down for something like that, but that's just an example of the fact that the bylaws are used to make sure that we do adhere to what we say we're going to do in the bylaws. So this is step 12 of 20, write the bylaws. Step 13 of 20. Step 13 of 20 steps to starting a 501c3 nonprofit organization. Step 13 is write narrative description of activities. Write the narrative description of activities. And this is a very important document in your Form 1023 application for recognition of exemption. The narrative description of activities, I call it the document that answers why. Why does this nonprofit organization deserve 501c3 status? Why should they be given 501c3 status? So, with the narrative description of activities, the first component of it, in my opinion, should be a restatement of the problem. Describe the problem again using storytelling. I say storytelling, you don't have to do it that way, but storytelling just makes it more enjoyable to read if you create the problem statement in terms of a story. Like I could have said something like, I have seen Daniel going to the bus stop every day on my way to work, but he never got on the bus. I would see him stand at the the bus stop, allow the bus to leave him standing there, and then he would go and do whatever he wanted to do throughout the day. I knew that Daniel was on the wrong track because he was essentially skipping school. He let his parents believe that he was catching a bus, but he never did. This is the reason why we have such a poor record of attendance for black male youth. Something along those lines. You want to tell a story to explain the problem, to draw people in, and to have them want to continue reading the narrative description of activities. The other part of the narrative is the demographic profile. Once again, you want to remind your readers of the people that you are helping. So you want to describe the people you plan to serve through the program by age, income, race, education, or anything else that may pertain to your program. The service area. Once again, you want to describe the service area by the location, the size, the income level, the educational level, and the population. Paint a picture of where the people who are in your demographic profile live. Continuing with the narrative description of activities, still on step 13 of 20. Now you want to describe the program activities. This is where you want to get into walking the reader through the steps of how your program is going to operate every day. So the program activities explain why. Remember I said the why earlier? Explains why the IRS should award the determination letter to your organization. It includes the following sections. Remember these: qualitative objectives, quantitative goals, detailed activities. What are they going to do every single day? Well, with our guys, with our program, we had speakers every day, about 3 speakers to come in to talk about their life experiences, and these were black men from the community. We had senior executives. We had businessmen, entrepreneurs. We had people who had been members of gangs in their young life, and it's to explain the consequences of those poor decisions. Then also during the day, of course, we had breakfast in the morning for them. We provided lunch. We provided fun activities because you have to provide fun activities, so they had time to have kinesthetic activities outside. We had big areas where they could play football or basketball or whatever they wanted to do. They had access to the gymnasium. So these are some examples of how you want to list your activities that they're going to enjoy throughout the day. We also had a program or part of our program where they would go to clean yards for the elderly and disabled, and that gives them a sense of the importance of giving back to the community. We had on Fridays were fun days, and we tried to provide field trips every Friday to bowling, skating, to the movies, or someplace on Fridays. And then we had, when they graduated from our program, we had a brotherhood retreat. And they would actually go out of town on a charter bus to different cities: Washington, D.C., Atlanta, Virginia, different places for them to get away and be to themselves for a whole entire weekend. So that's how I would list our detailed activities to kind of walk the reader through what we do or what we would do in our program in terms of activities. You want to have a clear schedule in there to guide them through the process of what goes on every day. Like I said, we started at 7:30, so we have 7:30 arrival, and I actually had this in writing. It was beneficial to have this in writing to share with the parents as well. But we had 7:30 arrival, then we had 8 o'clock breakfast, and then we had 9 o'clock Bible class. We had 9:30 Black History class, things like that. So you want to just show the schedule of activities that you're going to have every day. We've already talked about the job descriptions. You want to provide a copy of the job descriptions in this section again. We talked about the program budget or the expense report earlier. Remember when we added sections 8 and 9 together? But we want to put that here to show them that we do have a program budget, or you can call it an expense report. It really doesn't matter because you're just showing how much it's going to cost to offer this program. And then you want at the end to explain the return on investment because our program every year costs about $55,000. So we wanted to make sure people understood how that money was going to be used. What is the return on your investment? What can you expect from this program after you invest this money? So the qualitative objectives can tell them that, right? They're talking about behavioral changes. We're talking about attitude changes. We're talking about preparing black male youth to reach their full potential. And we're going to show and demonstrate through pictures and through testimonials and through feedback what our program is doing and how your money is being used, which is the return on your investment. So this is what the narrative description of activities entails. It takes a while to write it because it is very detailed, and it should be probably the longest document in your Form 1023 application for recognition of exemption packet. So this is 13 of 20. We're getting there. Step 14 of 20. Step 14 of 20 steps to starting a 501c3 nonprofit organization. Write the conflict of interest policy. You must have a conflict of interest policy in your application packet. So what is that? Charitable organizations are frequently subject to intense public scrutiny, especially where they appear to have inappropriately benefited their directors or employees. So Every time you hear something negative about a nonprofit organization in the media, it impacts your nonprofit organization. There are people, and there will always be people who are skeptical of nonprofit organizations. Some people just are convinced they're just not good things to have. They are convinced that it's just a scam. They're not for real. They don't do good work. It's just a way for people to hide behind the nonprofit status and make money for themselves. And that's not the case. But you want to be prepared for that scrutiny. And you also want to protect yourself from it. So a conflict of interest occurs where individuals' obligation to further the organization's charitable purposes is at odds with their own financial interests. In other words, the individuals don't have a concern about the charitable purpose of an organization. They are more interested in their financial gains from being a part of this organization and using the organization in the wrong way to benefit them. The IRS has an oversight role with respect to nonprofit organizations and provides a sample policy that's a conflict of interest policy to follow. So you can go to irs.gov and just search for the conflict of interest policy, and there's a sample that you can modify and use in your application packet because it has to be in there. You have to include it because it tells the world that you, and this is a broad statement. It tells the world that your organization is established for the good of the community, and it's not established to benefit any person over and above what is reasonable. Everyone deserves to be compensated. Okay, so it's not a conflict of interest to compensate your employees. It's expected, but it's not expected for you to, for example, if we were to rent a space for the emergency leadership program for black male youth, and we had a board member who happened to own rental property, and we just said, okay, we'll use John Doe's rental property because he has rental property, and we'll just pay him. That's a conflict of interest because that person benefited from that transaction by serving on the board of directors of your organization. So that's what a conflict of interest policy protects you from instances like that. Step 15 of 20. Step 15 of 20 steps to starting a 501c3 nonprofit organization. Write fundraising activities. All nonprofit organizations need money to operate. Let's stop there for a moment. I don't know why people think that nonprofit organizations don't need money. Nonprofit organizations need money to operate just like any other organization, a for-profit organization. So we have to use fundraising activities. Fundraising activities define the ways your organization will generate revenues to provide community services. How are you going to generate revenues? What activities are you going to use to do that? Fundraising activities include traditional and social media fundraising activities or fundraising strategies. A traditional fundraising strategy would be something like direct mail, sending postcards in the mail to let people know about your organization. And we all know social media fundraising strategies could include a Facebook page because Facebook now offers nonprofit buttons for you to add to your nonprofit Facebook page to solicit donations or to generate revenues for your organization. So we have to have fundraising activities. And the sky is the limit to the type of fundraising activities that you can use because they are as many fundraising activities as you are creative. So you can create fundraising activities, but I do recommend not having too many of them because you don't want people to be burned out. I suggest just having a fundraising activity on a quarterly basis, something different every quarter. That's just 4 times a year that you can have a fundraising activity, and that way people won't become bored or become overwhelmed by your request for investments. So that's step 15 of 20, right fundraising activities. Okay, we're back. And it's time for another knowledge check. So let's see what we learned in the last section. Knowledge check. Number one, where are the articles of incorporation filed? Two, which document is used by IRS agents during audits? Three, what is the most important part of the narrative? Four, James Bond, or James, James is a board member who wants the nonprofit organization to rent office space in a building he owns. Is this a conflict of interest? Let's take a few moments to read these questions again and think about your answers. Number one, where are the articles of incorporation filed? They are filed at the Secretary of State office in the state in which you plan to operate your nonprofit organization. Number two, which document is used by IRS agents during audits? The bylaws. Number three, what is the most important part of the narrative? The most important part of the narrative is the part where you describe exactly what you're doing on a day-to-day basis to give people an idea of exactly what they are investing in. What are they going to see as a result of the activities that your clients are going to enjoy every day? And four, James is a board member who wants a nonprofit organization to rent office space in a building he owns. Is this a conflict of interest? Absolutely yes. Step 16 of 20. Step 16 of 20. Write financial data report. Now it's time to write a report that shows the financial data of your nonprofit organization. The financial data report is a list of projected revenues and expenses for fiscal years 1, 2, and 3. Now the good news is we know what the projected expenses are already for the first year because we've already calculated it. Remember how we added the cost of human resources to the cost of assets to get the total expenses report? Well, that's what will go here. Now, that's for the first fiscal year 1. So how do you calculate the expenses for fiscal years 2 and 3? I use a simple calculation for that, and that calculation is I just add a 5% markup across the board to all of the expenses for years 2 and then again for year 3. So it would be a 5% markup from year 1 for the year 2 expenses and a 5% markup from year 2 to equal the year 3 expenses. That's how I work with expenses. Then what about revenues? You have to have revenues in order to cover expenses. There are several types of revenues that you can generate, but the type of revenues that we use for my nonprofit organization were grants, fundraising activities, investments from individuals, and tuition from the young men who participated in our program. So those are the 4 areas of revenues that we use to generate the money required to cover the expenses. So you want to create a financial data report. You know what a financial statement looks like. You have the revenues listed up top, and then you have the expenses listed at the bottom, and then you have a line at the very bottom that says net gain or net loss. I use Microsoft Excel to create this financial data report because it allows you to put in your formulas that will automatically calculate whatever you need to calculate. So whenever you need to make changes in the data, the new changes are automatically calculated. It's a very convenient tool to use for this purpose. So step 16 of 20 is write the financial data report. Okay, we're almost done. We're at step 17 of 20. Step, step 17 of 20 steps to starting a 501c3 nonprofit organization. Complete Form 1023 application for recognition of exemption. The Form 1023 application for recognition of exemption is the official application that you want to complete in order to earn 501c3 status. The Form 1023 application for recognition of exemption is the application that must be approved by an IRS exemption specialist to earn the 501c3 determination letter. There is no other way to earn the 501c3 determination letter than to complete the official application packet that's required. Now, you may wonder, why in the world is this step 17? It's step 17 because when you download the Form 1023 application for recognition of exemption, every single document that we've already talked about is referenced in that application, especially starting at step 11. Every one of the documents from step 11 through step 16 is referenced in the 1023. So you can't do or you can't complete the 1023 without having completed all of the documents that we've already done. I learned this the hard way. When I started my nonprofit organization way back in 2003, I started with the Form 1023 application for recognition of exemption. This was my first step, but I soon realized that I was doing things out of order because every time every time I thought that I was making progress in the application, it would always ask for something else. Do you have a copy of the bylaws? And I would have to stop and say, what is that? Then I would have to get that together. Then I'd try to keep going. Do you have a copy of the conflict of interest policy? It just got to be ridiculous. So, needless to say, my experience with submitting my Form 1023 or applying for my 501c3 status was hard. But after I earned the status, people started asking me, well, how do you go through the process? How do I earn my status? And so one day I decided, let me just sit down and write the steps in the right order and share them with people so they'll know how to complete their application packet in the order that will help them be successful and to reduce their stress. So now we're on step 17 of 20, and that is completing the Form 1023 application for recognition of exemption. Step 18 of 20. Step 18 of 20 steps to starting a 501c3 nonprofit organization. Organize the Form 1023 application packet. And it is a packet of information. It's not just one little application. It's a packet that includes the application plus all of the attachments we've already talked about. You have your cover letter, your EIN letter, your application fee, which is a certified check for $600, your application checklist, then the Form 1023 application, your articles of incorporation that have been filed, remember, filed by the Secretary of State's office, you want to include a copy of that, your bylaws, your narrative description of activities, your fundraising activities, conflict of interest policy, and financial data report. This is the order in which you should submit your application packet. If you put all of your documents in this order, you should have success because the exemption specialist will appreciate very much that your application packet is organized in the right way. That makes their job easier. Step 19 of 20. Step number 19 of 20 steps to starting a 501c3 nonprofit organization. Proofread the entire application packet. Once you have organized the application packet in the way that we've already discussed in the last slide, Then you want to proofread the entire Form 1023 application packet for recognition of exemption 2 days after you complete it to make sure that it flows smoothly from beginning to end without grammatical and spelling errors. Walk away from it. Walk away from it for at least 2 days and then come back to it with fresh eyes so that you can see or that you can confirm that everything is right and it flows smoothly from beginning to end. That's important because guess what? You're going to be submitting it to an exemption specialist who knows absolutely nothing about what you want to do. So your job is to make it easy for them, very easy for them to read your application packet. And finally, step 20 of 20. We made it. Step 20 of 20. Mail the application packet. Yes, we still have to mail it. There is no electronic submission process for this Form 1023 application packet yet. So we still have to print out all of the documents that were listed and place them in an envelope and mail them. Mail the packet. After the Form 1023 application for recognition of exemption is completed, 1. Double check to make sure the application packet documents are in the correct order. 2. Attach a check for the correct processing fee to the top of the application packet. 3. Mail the packet to the IRS address provided. And that address is provided in the instructions for completing a Form 1023 application for recognition of exemption. Make sure you send it to the right location. So that's step 20 of 20. Mail the application packet. So we made it. Ooh, wow. We made it. We learned the 20 steps to starting a 501c3 nonprofit organization. Congratulations. Congratulations for getting this far. So let's finish up. Now it's time for a knowledge check for this last section that you learned. Knowledge check. Number 1. What is the difference between earned and honorary 501c3 status? Number 2. What is one reason you should not complete the Form 1023 EZ? What is one reason you should not complete it? So take a few moments to read these questions and think about your answers. Okay, so what is the difference between earned and honorary 501c3 status? An earned status is given to organizations that have gone through the official Form 1023 application process. They have completed all of the steps that I talked about, all 20 steps. They compiled their information and they submitted the application packet to the IRS for review by an exemption specialist. The exemption specialist deemed the application packet to be worthy of 501c3 status. Therefore, they sent a determination letter to the executive director notifying them that the organization had earned 501c3 status. An honorary status, on the other hand, is something that most churches have because, according to IRS guidelines, churches and other religious organizations like mosques are automatically given 501c3 status as long as they are incorporated according to IRS guidelines. In other words, as long as they are legal churches and other religious organizations, they are automatically given 501c3 status without having to submit an application packet. The problem with that is this: the honorary status is not respected. That means that major grant funders, investors, and other people who would contribute to your organization or to a church or anybody with the honorary status is not going to do so because they just want to see a determination letter. They know a determination letter proves you've gone through the entire process and your information has been read and approved by an IRS exemption specialist. Major corporations, for example, have to report to a board of directors. And the board of directors are mandating that they not contribute to organizations that do not have a determination letter. So that's the difference. People with the earned 501c3 status have gone through the application process and have passed. People with the honorary 501c3 status is just given the status because they are either churches or other religious organizations and have not earned it, have not gone through any process. Number two, what is one reason you should not complete the Form 1023-EZ? Well, it's many reasons, but the main reason that I would like to highlight here is the fact that you don't have to have anything reviewed. You don't have to have anything reviewed. It's just a matter of your word saying you've done everything, and later on it's going to trap you up. It's going to cause a problem for you. So that's one reason why you shouldn't complete it. Before I let you go, I want to share a warning with you. I want to share a warning with you because I see so many people making this mistake, and I really want to help you avoid it because it's very frustrating when you go through this process. I'm asking you, please do not complete the IRS Form 1023-EZ application because question number 1 on the eligibility requirements for that application makes it almost impossible to submit an accurate Form 990 information report. The Form 1023-EZ is a short form of the Form 1023 standard that we just talked about. The regular or the standard Form 1023 application for recognition of exemption, which I've been preparing you for all throughout this class, is a long form. It's a long application. It's probably, I think it's about 28 pages. The 1023-EZ is just a checklist. It's like a questionnaire. And all you have to do is just go through the questionnaire and say, I've done all of this. For example, I've done my bylaws, I've done my conflict of interest policy, check. I've done my narrative description of activities, check. My fundraising activities, check. Just check off everything that you've done, even if you haven't done it. Just say you did it. And what people don't normally do is when they go through or when they go to the irs.gov website, right, and they download the Form 1023-EZ, they don't download the instructions because that's a separate document. But in the instructions, you have a link to the eligibility requirements. You have to be eligible to use the Form 1023-EZ, but some people don't even know that the eligibility requirements exist because you can complete the application without even reading the eligibility requirements, and that's where the trap is. You see, there are over 30 questions or 30 requirements, eligibility requirements. And if you never read them, you don't know whether you meet the eligibility requirements or not, do you? The first question is, your organization can't be projected to earn more than $50,000 in the first 2 years of operation. So for the first 2 years of operation, you are saying that your organization will not earn $50,000 for year 1, and it will not earn $50,000 for year 2. Earn means generated revenues. Now, that's very hard to say because, I mean, what organization can operate for less than that? And I know you probably say, well, ours can. Well, maybe it can. But I don't know how unless unless the people who are helping you are going to be volunteers. Another thing about this is when you can't answer that question, then it's almost impossible to submit an accurate Form 990 information report. Now, a Form 990 information report is the report that you submit to the IRS every year to show the revenues you generated and the expenses you've paid the prior year. Now, if the revenues you've generated surpass $50,000, which was eligibility question number one, then you've already made a mistake that's gotten you in hot water. The Form 990 information report is due by the 5th month and the 15th day after the end of your fiscal year. So if your fiscal year ends December 31st, then your information report is due to the IRS by May the 15th of the next year. Now on the next slide, I go into great detail about the Form 990 information report, the 3 different types, and the requirements of each type. Okay. I know this slide, information on this slide may seem confusing. So the bottom line is this. The Form 1023 application, the Form 1023 EZ, the E and Z are in red so that I can highlight that. The cost to submit it is $275. And that's what draws people in. That's what attracts people to this application. They don't read the fine print as they say. They just are attracted to the low cost. Because the cost for the standard Form 1023, the long version, is $600. Now, the $600 represents a change in the fee because all before, up until December 2017, for many years, the fee was $850. So it's changed by $250, which is good. So I'm asking you, just go to loan form. It won't put any restrictions on the amount of money you can raise, and you don't have to worry about any other eligibility requirements. In addition to that, you will have documents that you can keep in your file that the IRS has approved for you to use. And that's important. You want to have your organization go through the process of where an exemption specialist will review what you have. You want that approval. So just don't do the Form 1023 easy, please, for your sake. Let's talk about the IRS Form 990 Information Report Guidelines. Remember, I just mentioned the information report. Well, by the 5th month and the 15th day after your fiscal year ends, you're going to have to submit some type of information report. So here are the form types. There are 3 Form 990 types. You have the 990N, which is also called the e-postcard, the 990EZ, and the 990. Now you will use the 990N or the e-postcard if your gross receipts for the prior year was between $0 and $50,000. And it doesn't matter about the assets at this level, not applicable. And you might say, well, why did you put 0? I put 0 because if you had 0, you said you had to report 0. If you don't submit some type of Form 990 information report for 3 consecutive years, then your 501c3 status is automatically revoked. No conversation. It's just taken. You will receive a letter to let you know it has been revoked in the past tense. So that's why this is crucial to understand. If you earn $50,001 all the way up to $200,000 and you have assets of less than $500,000, then you will submit the Form 990EZ. If your gross receipts were $200,001 or more and your gross assets were $500,001 or more, then you will submit the Form 990. So this is the guideline to show you which type of information reports you should submit by the 5th month and the 15th day after your fiscal year ends. Because if you miss it again for 3 consecutive years, automatic revocation of your 501c3 status. Don't want that to happen. Now, this is just some information that I just said. Sometimes I get ahead of myself, so I just leave this up here and let you read it. This important statement at the bottom, I've already said it, but I'll just leave it here for a few moments to let you read it. Okay, so that's the 990 Information Report Guidelines. Okay, we're almost at the end, so you may be asking the question, what happens next? What now? Next steps. Approximately 3 weeks after you mail the application packet to the IRS, you will receive an acknowledgement letter to confirm receipt and to explain the next steps in the process. Now, if you have not received that acknowledgement letter in 3 weeks or within 3 weeks after you have submitted your application packet, then there's no harm in calling the IRS just to make sure that they received it. And they should be able to give you an update on where it is in the review process. The Internal Revenue Service requests six months to process the application packet. So, I don't really see that many application packets that I submit on behalf of people taking 6 months to process, but they do request that you give them that amount of time to process your application packet. So, if it's something that you want to do, and it's kind of urgent, you want to go ahead and get the application packet submitted. The exemption specialist assigned to process your application packet will notify you via mail if they have any questions or need additional information. I highlighted mail in red for the simple reason they're not going to call you on the phone. They're not going to send you an email. They're not going to send you a text message. They are going to mail you a letter. That's how they operate. Now, if you get a letter, if you get a letter, yes, I'm sorry, and you respond to the letter by calling them because they will give you their contact information for you to call them back. If you tell them, for example, if you call them and you get their voicemail and you ask for them to call you back, they will call you back. But the first contact will not be in the form of a letter, and they will not call you back unless you specifically tell them to call you back. If the application packet meets all IRS requirements, you will simply receive a 501c3 determination letter in the mail. It's going to come in regular mail. It's not going to be certified or registered or anything. It's just going to be a regular letter, no fanfare. But it will be your determination letter if you meet all of the requirements. So, it's time for me to plug myself. If you want me to complete your application packet for you, I'll be glad to do that. Again, I started a 501c3 nonprofit organization in 2003. I operated 2 programs that positively impacted the communities that we served. I understand the IRS regulations. I try to make it a habit of reading the IRS, something about the IRS and the nonprofit sector at least once a week. And I also subscribe to the IRS um, newsletters for exempt organizations to stay abreast of changes that come up. I've earned 3 certificates, as I shared with you before, in nonprofit management from Duke University, Wake Forest University, and Winthrop University. I am thorough and meticulous. I look at your organization as my organization if you hire me to do your paperwork. I require a free phone consultation, a 1-hour phone consultation before I accept any clients, and that phone consultation gives me a chance to listen to your vision and to determine whether or not it falls into one of the 8 purposes that the IRS requires. I do offer a contractual agreement that outlines everything that I'm going to do for you when completing your 501c3 application packet. And that agreement also protects you because it lists what you can expect from me. I have a 100% IRS approval rating for all of the clients who have hired me to do their paperwork. And now I'm up to 45 clients. And those clients are from across the United States. Again, I have 45 satisfied clients. I provide my clients with an application timeline, and that timeline lets them know when they can expect different documents from me to review because I partner with my clients. So when I send a timeline out after they have processed their payment, I send a timeline out and it shows them when they can expect the bylaws, when they can expect the narrative, when they can expect the fundraising activities, everything that I send out, they will know when to expect it. And I will also include in the timeline when I expect feedback from them. So that timeline keeps us abreast of what we are doing to complete the application packet together. I ask for a 15-day turnaround time to get everything completed. I write all the documents from scratch, and again, I send them to you or to the client for review and feedback, and I make revisions so that you are happy with the final product. Then, once you are happy with everything, all of the documents, I will then package the documents in the way the IRS requires, and I will send those documents to you to mail to the IRS so that you don't have to wonder if I got them in the mail or not. They will be sent to you to mail yourself along with the $600 application processing fee. My fee is $1,000 to do all of the work that I've described, and that fee has to be paid up front. If you refer me to other people, I give you a $100 referral gratitude gift card for you to use. So that's my plug for myself. If you just don't want to do the work to earning your 501c3 nonprofit organization, I can certainly help you with that. Another service that I like to promote is the private on-site classes that I offer. If you would like for me to teach a private how to start a 501c3 nonprofit organization class at a location that you provide, please schedule a consultation so we can talk about the logistics. And the private class fee is $50 per person. Okay, some closing thoughts and then we'll be done. Closing thoughts. Do not complete Form 1023-EZ, and I'm not going to say anything else about that. Subscribe to the IRS Exemption Organization updates. You can go to irs.gov and just select IRS E/O updates and subscribe so that you will be able to get those updates in your email on a regular basis. Start small with one program or project. Don't start large and saying I'm going to have 3 or 4 programs because believe me, one program is enough. You can always add later at no additional charge. Establish a revenue generation team. That's a group of people that you will hire to generate revenues for your organization. Meet with your board of directors on a quarterly basis. Every 3 months, you want to meet with them to provide updates and to keep them abreast of how things are going. Always host orientation meetings when you bring on new team members so that they can get to know each other and get a good understanding of how your organization operates. Ignore the condescending little word. You will see, I'm telling you, you will see when you start your nonprofit organization, there are going to be some people who are going to say some very unpleasant things to you, And one thing that they say, one word they love to use is little. Little. I heard about your little organization that you're trying to start. I heard about your little program for youth. I don't know why people do that, but it's just a very condescending way to talk to people. Do your very best. That's all that you can do. That's all that's required. You can't do any more than your best. And then finally, take care of yourself. Stay healthy. I had to learn that the hard way. There would be many nights where I would go through the McDonald's drive-through and I order whatever number three, the quarter pounder with cheese, large fries, and a large Coke. Come home, eat that, and stay up half the night writing grants or whatever I needed to do. Needless to say, that's very unhealthy and it wore me down after a while. So what I started doing is I started managing my time better, writing checklists. I started eating better. I started exercising. I joined a group exercise class, go to that and drink a lot of water. You feel so much better. And take breaks too. Go for a long walk. Don't let this consume you because you can only do as much as you can do. Enjoy your family, enjoy a social life outside of your nonprofit organization. Don't let it take control like it did for me for many years until I burned completely out. So those are just some closing thoughts that I wanted to share with you. So that's it for us. That's the end of this class. I hope that it helped you. I hope it helps you to get started with your own 501c3 nonprofit organization. I applaud you for caring so much about your community that you want to make a difference. Because when you start a 501c3 nonprofit organization, again, it's a process. And you have to have a good, genuine, compassionate heart to want to take on this task. Again, thank you so much for completing this class, and I hope that it exceeded your expectations. Have a good day.